In this lesson, we're going to focus on Section 9, Buyer Obligations. This section, 1. Explains what the buyer agrees to do while working with a broker. 2. Requires good faith cooperation throughout the process. 3. Obliges the buyer to provide financial and personal information on time. 4. Requires the buyer to read and understand all documents provided. 5. Encourages seeking appropriate professional advice when needed. 6. Confirms the buyer is responsible for paying for inspections, reports, and investigations. 7. Requires the buyer to communicate material concerns clearly and in writing. Section 9 is important because representation works best when both sides fulfill their responsibilities. These obligations help ensure smoother transactions, clearer communication, and fewer misunderstandings or disputes. In this video, we'll walk through each part of Section 9 step by step, translating the legal language into practical, easy-to-understand expectations that you can confidently explain to your clients. Let's begin with paragraph A, good faith, which sets the foundation for the buyer-broker relationship. Section 9A, good faith. What it means. The buyer agrees to 1. Timely view and consider properties selected by the broker. 2. Negotiate in good faith to acquire a property. 3. Act in good faith toward completing any contract they enter into. This doesn't force the buyer to buy a home they don't want. It simply requires the buyer to participate honestly, view homes, communicate, and negotiate sincerely if they decide to move forward. Section 9B, one buyer must provide financial info within the time specified in Section 2G1. This includes things like 1. Proof of funds needed for purchase. 2. Ability to satisfy any obligation to pay broker, if applicable. 3. Pre-approval or pre-qualification letter. If they don't provide it or don't qualify, the broker may cancel the agreement in writing. Section 9B, 2 if box in 2G2 is checked, buyer doesn't have funds to pay broker. This subsection kicks in only if Section 2G2 is checked. A. Buyer agrees to include a term in the offer requesting the seller pay the buyer's broker. B. The transaction becomes contingent on seller or others agreeing to pay broker the full amount the buyer is obligated to pay. It also explains 1. This contingency is for the benefit of the broker. 2. If seller won't pay the full amount, broker may cancel representation for that specific property. 3. Broker must inform buyer/seller/listing agent the buyer is proceeding without representation and an agency confirmation is completed removing broker as representing buyer. Section 9C, one buyer agrees to read all documents. This means the buyer is responsible for reviewing disclosures, inspection reports, advisories, contract terms, addenda, etc. Section 9C, 2 buyer agrees to seek help from appropriate professionals. Examples: inspectors, contractors, engineers, attorneys, accountants, insurance professionals, any specialists mentioned in the buyer's investigation advisory. Section 9C, 3 buyer is advised to read the buyer's investigation advisory. This highlights that the buyer should investigate items that may warrant further review. Section 9D, reports/investigations. What it says: buyer agrees to pay for reports, investigations, and meetings arranged by broker for buyer. If we schedule inspections or professional investigations, the buyer is responsible for paying those costs. Section 9E, buyer material issues. What it requires. For any property the buyer is considering or has offered on, the buyer must notify or update the broker in writing about any material issue to the buyer, such as 1. Specific requests for information. 2. Concerns about important topics. 3. Priorities that matter to the buyer. This section references Car Form B-SB, important consequence in the paragraph. If the buyer does not provide that information, the property may be deemed to satisfy the buyer's material considerations, even if a preference/priorities form, like BPP, exists. Section 9F, incorrect, incomplete, or inaccurate information. What it means. If the buyer provides wrong info or fails to disclose material issues in writing, the buyer agrees to indemnify, defend, hold broker harmless, from claims, disputes, litigation, judgments, and costs arising from that incorrect info or non-disclosure. This means the buyer must be truthful and complete. If they give incorrect information or withhold important facts, and that causes problems, they may be responsible for the consequences.